Have you seen what they've done to your song?
For over 6 decades, Pastor Shirley Caesar has been a towering force in gospel music, her powerful voice and inspiring message touching millions around the world. Known as the First Lady of Gospel, she built a legacy of faith, perseverance, and love that transcended generations. But behind her radiant smile and uplifting songs lies a story of loss, pain, and unspoken tragedy that few fans truly know. Born into poverty in Durham, North Carolina, Shirley's journey to fame was anything but easy. From a young age, she faced unimaginable hardship, the kind of struggle that could have broken anyone else. Yet through every trial, she clung to her faith and turned her pain into praise. But even after achieving global recognition, multiple Grammy Awards, and a respected place among gospel's greatest voices, Shirley endured heartbreak after heartbreak, personal losses that tested the very strength of her spirit. She stood on stage and sang about God's grace while quietly carrying the weight of grief and sacrifice behind the scenes. Today, as Pastor Caesar reflects on her life and legacy, she's finally opening up about the struggles that shaped her and the heartbreaking moments that nearly silenced her voice forever. Her story isn't just about fame, it's about faith, resilience, and a woman who refused to let tragedy define her. Long before she became known as the First Lady of Gospel, Shirley Caesar was just a little girl with a big voice and an even bigger dream. Born on October 13, 1938, in Durham, North Carolina, she grew up in a humble household filled with love, music, and faith. Her father, James Caesar, was a well-known gospel singer in their community, and it was from him that young Shirley inherited her remarkable talent. But when she was only 8 years old, tragedy struck. Her father passed away, leaving her mother to raise 12 children alone. For most children, that kind of loss would have been devastating. But even at a young age, Shirley believed her gift was a calling. She began singing in church and at local events, her voice filled with the kind of passion that could move anyone who heard it. People in her town started to say there was something divine about her voice, a power that seemed to come straight from heaven. By her teenage years, Shirley's talent had already begun to attract attention beyond her hometown. She joined the legendary gospel group, the Caravans, in the 1950s, performing alongside some of the greatest gospel singers of the era. Her energy, stage presence, and faith quickly set her apart. Fans across the country were captivated by the young woman who could make audiences weep and rejoice all in the same song. But Shirley's rise wasn't without struggle. Traveling with gospel groups in the segregated South wasn't easy. The long bus rides, the lack of hotels that would accept black performers, and the uncertainty of each show tested her spirit. Still, she refused to give up. "God didn't give me this voice to quit," she once said. "He gave it to me to change lives." In the years that followed, Shirley embarked on a solo career that would make history. Her songs, such as Hold My Mule and No Charge, became anthems of hope and perseverance. With more than a dozen Grammy Awards and over 40 albums, she not only became one of the most respected figures in gospel music, but also one of its most enduring. Her performances weren't just concerts. They were spiritual experiences that uplifted everyone who listened. Through her music, Shirley spoke to those who were broken, forgotten, or afraid. She became a beacon of strength for people facing hardship, reminding them that faith could overcome anything. Her voice crossed generations, uniting churchgoers, believers, and even those who didn't follow gospel closely. Yet, even as she was moving millions with her music, Shirley was quietly carrying her own burdens, challenges that would later reveal the depth of her faith. Behind her radiant stage presence and joyous praise was a woman who had endured personal losses, heartbreaks, and the heavy weight of responsibility. But in this first chapter of her life, one truth stood above all others. Shirley Caesar's voice didn't just move a nation, it inspired one. Her songs were not born out of comfort, but out of pain and perseverance. Every note she sang carried the echo of her struggles, her triumphs, and her unshakable belief that God was always in control. Behind the dazzling smile, the radiant performances, and the powerful sermons, Pastor Shirley Caesar carried a lifetime of heartbreak, Though she spent her career lifting others with songs of faith and triumph, few truly understood the sacrifices and personal losses that shaped her journey. Her life was not only one of success, it was one of endurance, loss, and unwavering trust in God. Even when her world seemed to fall apart, after years of touring and ministering through music, Shirley's career reached heights few gospel artists had ever imagined. She had won Grammy Awards, traveled the world, and inspired millions. Yet, the higher she climbed, the more she found herself facing painful valleys. One of her earliest heartbreaks came when she lost her beloved mother, Hannah Caesar, the woman who had raised 12 children alone and had always been Shirley's greatest supporter. When Hannah passed away, Shirley said it felt as though the light went out of her world. Her mother had been her foundation, her encourager, her guide, and her prayer warrior. The grief hit her so deeply that for a time Shirley considered stepping away from music altogether. "I just couldn't sing," she once admitted. Every note felt heavy with pain. But in that season of mourning, she felt God calling her back, not to escape the pain, but to use it. Out of her loss came a renewed purpose, to comfort others who had endured the same kind of heartbreak. Her sacrifices didn't stop there. As her ministry expanded, Shirley poured herself into her church, her community, and her congregation, often at the expense of her own personal life. While many of her peers enjoyed time with family, Shirley was constantly on the road, preaching and singing for those who needed encouragement. "Sometimes," she said, "serving God means giving up the very things your heart desires." She later faced another devastating blow with the loss of her husband, Bishop Harold Williams, in 2014. The two had shared not only a marriage but a ministry. Together they pastored Mount Calvary Word of Faith Church in Raleigh, North Carolina, serving the community with love and compassion. His death left Shirley shattered. He had been her partner in every sense, her confidant, her covering, her best friend. For months after his passing, she would sit alone in the church, praying and asking God for the strength to continue. Through tears and faith, she found it. "Even when I couldn't feel his hand," she once said, "I knew God was holding me." That unshakable faith became her anchor, carrying her through the darkest moments of her life. Shirley's story is one of sacrifice, not just of fame and comfort, but of the very things that make us human. Yet, despite every heartbreak, she never allowed bitterness to take root. Instead, she transformed her pain into power, her grief into gratitude. Her songs began to carry even deeper meaning, resonating with anyone who had ever lost someone or suffered in silence. Every time she stepped on stage after her losses, Shirley wasn't just performing, she was surviving. Her voice carried the echo of her heartache, but also the sound of victory. Through it all, she reminded the world that even in tragedy, faith can still triumph. For Pastor Shirley Caesar, faith was never just a word. It was the force that carried her through storms that would have broken most people. Yet even she faced moments when her faith was stretched to its breaking point. In the years following the death of her husband, Bishop Harold Williams, Shirley entered what she would later call the darkest season of my life. For more than 3 decades, Shirley and her husband had shared a ministry, a home, and a purpose. They preached together, sang together, and supported each other through every challenge. When he passed away in 2014 after a long battle with illness, Shirley found herself in a silence she didn't know how to fill. "I went home to a house that felt empty," she said. The walls still echoed with his voice. At first, she threw herself into her work, preaching, singing, and traveling as she always had. But the exhaustion soon set in. Without her partner beside her, every church service felt heavier. Even the songs that once brought her comfort now stirred painful memories. The woman who had inspired millions with songs like "You're Next in Line for a Miracle" suddenly found herself struggling to believe in her own strength. Her health began to decline from the strain of overwork and grief. Friends urged her to slow down, but Shirley had never known how to rest. "I thought if I stopped, I'd fall apart," she admitted. "So I kept moving, until my spirit told me to be still." That moment came late one night in her prayer room. Overwhelmed by loneliness, Shirley broke down, crying out to God for answers. Why take him now? Why leave me alone? She prayed through tears. And in that stillness, she said she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. God reminded me that I wasn't alone, she later shared. He told me, "You still have work to do." It was then that Shirley began to rebuild, not just her ministry but her heart. She started journaling, spending more time in prayer and reconnecting with her church family. Slowly, her voice, once cracked by grief, regained its strength. Her sermons grew more personal, her songs deeper. When she stood before her congregation again, she spoke not as a woman untouched by pain, but as someone who had faced the fire and come out refined. Still, she admitted that the loneliness never truly left. "Some days I miss him so much it hurts," she said in an interview. "But then I remember, he's with God, and I'm still here for a reason." That season of darkness reshaped her understanding of faith. It wasn't about pretending to be strong. It was about trusting God even when she felt weak. She learned that faith isn't proven on the mountaintop, it's forged in the valley. Her darkest chapter became her greatest testimony. When she sang again, songs like "He'll Do It Again" and "God Will Make a Way," there was a new kind of power in her voice, the kind that only comes from surviving heartbreak. People who saw her perform could feel it. She wasn't just singing. She was living the words she preached. Through loss, pain, and loneliness, Shirley Caesar discovered that even when everything else fades, faith remains. And in that faith, she found her light again. After enduring so much heartbreak, the loss of her mother, her husband, and the weight of years spent carrying others through their pain, many wondered how Pastor Shirley Caesar found the strength to keep going. But as she often said, when you've walked with God long enough, you learn that every storm has a purpose. In the quiet years that followed her husband's passing, Shirley made a decision. She would not let grief silence her calling. Instead, she would use her pain as a testimony. Slowly, she began to step back into the pulpit and the studio, not because she wanted applause, but because she knew her voice still had work to do. "As long as I can lift my voice," she said, "I'll keep telling the world about the goodness of God." Her healing began in the same place where her journey had started, the church. Surrounded by her congregation at Mount Calvary Word of Faith Church in Raleigh, North Carolina, Shirley found comfort in ministering to others who were also broken. "Every time I preached to someone hurting," she said, "I felt God healing me too." Her sermons became more heartfelt, her songs more personal. Audiences could feel the difference. This wasn't just Shirley Caesar, the gospel icon. This was a woman who had lived through fire and found peace on the other side. She also turned to the thing she knew best, music. In 2016, her powerful song, "It's All Right, It's Okay," became a reminder that no matter what life takes from you, faith can restore what's lost. The same year, she became a viral sensation with the You Name It challenge, which introduced her legacy to a new generation. Suddenly, millions of young people were discovering her voice, proof that even after decades in gospel music, Shirley Caesar was still touching hearts in ways she never imagined. But what truly defined this new chapter wasn't fame or recognition. It was peace. She began focusing on mentoring younger gospel artists, sharing her wisdom and reminding them that ministry is about service, not spotlight. She also started spending more time in quiet reflection, surrounded by her church family and the memories of her late husband. "I don't cry as much now," she admitted in a later interview, "because I've realized I never really lost him. His spirit still walks with me." Her words reflected the kind of faith that doesn't come easy. It's the kind built through tears, waiting, and prayer. Through every heartbreak, Shirley Caesar has remained a living testimony that faith truly conquers all. She has shown the world that resilience isn't about never falling. It's about rising again with grace and purpose. Even in her 80s, she continues to preach, sing, and inspire, proving that her calling was never about fame, but about faithfulness. When asked how she keeps her spirit strong after all she's faced, Shirley smiled and said, "Because God has been good to me. even in the hard times. Especially in the hard times, her life is a reminder that tragedy does not have the final word. Through the darkest valleys and the deepest sorrow, Shirley Caesar found her strength not in the applause of the world, but in the quiet, unshakable faith that has guided her since childhood. And today, when she steps to the microphone and sings, her voice still carries that same holy fire, the sound of a woman who has lost much, endured more but never once lost her faith.